Good day everyone. Today I'm going to demonstrate to you a tutorial on coffee with this self-explanatory drawing and in a quick and a fast way. Alright? Just completing the final touches. Yeah. Just there, but there has to be need to complete, right? Some shading is left and we'll have this lovely drawing, and then the explanation will start. Very simple tutorial. Yeah, it will explain to you the whole process of coffee in a very simple way. Very simple method, but a very difficult plant to take care of. A lot of work involved, but very good to know about this beautiful plant. Yeah. All right. There are two kinds of coffee plants. They are Robusta and Arabica. Robusta can live up to 100 years approximately, and Arabica can live up to 25 years approximately. However, there are several other varieties of coffee plants, but these two are the most important ones which were there in the past. So coffee requires good sunlight, it requires good shade, and it requires good rainfall. For more specific information on coffee related to the manure or anything related to coffee cultivation, go to ecofriendlycoffee.org. And you need to know more about roasting, please go to ineedcoffee.com and you will see all our articles out there for more information. All right. So once you have a good rain in the month of March, you should be expecting a good blossom. Okay. So normally Arabica is picked, cherries are picked in December, whereas Robusta are picked in January. Okay, depending on their time frame. So once the blossom takes place, the honeybees play an active role to pollinate and form the small cherries. These cherries then form into bigger cherries. It takes around a 9-month process, and then it turns into a blood red color when it is ready to be picked. To be very specific, in December Arabica is ready for picking, in January Robusta is ready for picking. So let's now talk about how we're going to dry these coffee cherries and get the bean out of it. So there are two methods. One method is the dry method and the other one is the wet method. So now let's just talk about the dry method. So once you pick your cherries, okay, you pick them and put them into sacks. And remember, the coffee plant, the height of a coffee plant should be just enough for someone to reach on top and pick, otherwise it's going to be labor intensive. So we keep the coffee plant to the height of a human being. Okay, that's one good tip. And then you remember that we are now talking about the dry method. So the dry method, you pick the cherries and then you put the cherries to dry under the sun. It takes around a week to 10 days, or if the sun is not, you don't have good sun rays, not adequate, it will take you around 2 weeks. So now once it is dry, the cherry will have a dry cover on the outside, and the bean inside will be, it will be shaking, and then it's time for you to hull it using the dry method. So you put it in your hulling machine, and what you get out here is the hulled beans. Just to make it clear regarding the parchment, now you may ask me probably what is parchment. So the parchment is just a thin cover outside this bean, and of course outside that parchment you have the thick cover. Okay. In the dry method, when you hull the cherry and remove the skin from the bean, during the hulling process, the parchment is nothing but a layer that is around the coffee bean. Okay, there's a layer around the coffee bean. So in the dry method, dry method of hulling, this layer comes off, whereas in the wet method, the layer of the parchment, which is a cover, it's a thin cover, it remains in the pulping method, and you have to decide whether you need to take this cover or keep it. I would probably keep it because it's of no harm, and the parchment thin cover is helpful to protect the coffee bean for a longer period of time, and the husk falls out on the other end. So during this hulling process, your parchment also falls off in the dry method, and you have the clear bean to roast. So the dry method ready for roast. Now let's talk about the wet method. The wet method is, again, you pick the beans and then you don't dry it. It will straight away go into your pulper to deskin it, and here you use water. That is why you call this a wet method. And the skin, you can manually rotate it or using an electric motor. The skin comes out here, known as the sippo, and the beans fall here. Remember, these beans have the parchment cover, unlike the dry method. So these beans are now having the parchment cover. Okay, and you have to decide whether you keep the parchment cover or you send it to the shop to take off that layer. But in most cases we keep the parchment cover because it protects the bean to last for a longer period of time. So now in the wet method, you have the bean ready. You need to decide whether you need to take out the parchment cover or you leave the parchment cover there. You can go straight away to roast. Once you decide to roast, you can then make sure whether you need to go to dark roast or a mild roast. A dark roast means you roast it for a longer period of time. Mild roast, you roast it for a lesser period of time. Once your roasting is done, you grind it. This is a manual grinder. You can use an electric grinder, whichever equipment you have. Once the grinds are ready over here, it can go into the coffee pot, put some water. You can boil it, or you can use any other modern method. Once the coffee is ready, you can strain the grinds and you're ready for the coffee. Okay, you can add your milk and sugar. So this is a simple methodical tutorial explaining the entire process from the coffee plant, Robusta Arabica, to the dry method, to the wet method, straight away to the beans that are hulled with the parchment out, the beans that have the parchment ready for roast, ground, hot coffee, poured in a cup, and there you go. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video and the entire explanation. Have a lovely day, and thank you for staying in touch.